There comes a moment in life when you realize the loudest noise isn't coming from the world around you. It's coming from your own mind. It's the voices you replay, the judgments you remember, the opinions you never agreed with but somehow allowed to move in and rearrange your thoughts. Somewhere along the way, you gave people free rent inside your head, and they've been speaking without permission ever since. That's not strength. That's surrender. The psychology of not caring isn't about becoming cold, arrogant, or disconnected. It's about understanding that not every thought deserves your attention and not every opinion deserves your energy. You can listen without absorbing. You can hear without obeying. You can respect others without shrinking yourself. The strongest people aren't the ones who react to everything. They're the ones who choose what matters and let the rest pass by. When you stop letting people live in your head, something powerful happens. Your focus sharpens. Your confidence stabilizes. Your decisions stop shaking every time someone disagrees with you. You realize that peace isn't found by controlling the world. It's built by mastering your response to it. You were never meant to carry everyone's expectations, fears, or projections. This is about reclaiming your mind, protecting your purpose, and walking forward with calm certainty. When you learn how not to care about what doesn't serve you, you finally create space to care deeply about what does. From the moment we become aware of ourselves, we also become aware of others, and with that awareness comes a silent habit of comparison, judgment, and approval-seeking that slowly teaches us to measure our worth through external reactions. Other people's opinions gain emotional power over us because the human brain is wired for social survival, and approval once meant safety, belonging, and protection. When someone criticizes us, ignores us, or doubts us, the mind interprets it not as a simple opinion, but as a threat to identity. That is why a single comment can replay in your head for days while 100 compliments disappear within minutes. This power grows when you unconsciously tie your self-image to how others perceive you. If your confidence depends on validation, every reaction becomes a scoreboard. Praise feels like oxygen, and criticism feels like suffocation. Over time, you stop asking, "What do I believe?" and start asking, "How will this look?" That shift is dangerous because it hands control of your emotional state to people who may not even understand you, respect you, or care about your growth. Their words begin to shape your inner dialogue, and slowly, you start thinking thoughts that aren't even yours. Another reason opinions carry weight is repetition. The mind believes what it hears often, especially when it comes from authority figures, peers, or people whose approval you value. A careless remark, repeated internally, becomes a perceived truth. This is how doubt is planted. You weren't born questioning your value, but exposure to judgment taught you to do it automatically. Once that loop forms, the brain looks for evidence to confirm it, reinforcing the emotional grip others have on you. Understanding this psychology is the first step to freedom. When you recognize that emotional pain from opinions is not proof of truth, but a conditioned response, you regain perspective. You begin to see that most judgments say more about the speaker than the target. People project their fears, insecurities, and limitations outward, and when you internalize those projections, you mistake them for reality. Not every opinion is earned, and not every voice is qualified to guide your life. Emotional power only exists where permission is given. The moment you become aware of why opinions affect you, you create space between the trigger and the reaction. In that space, choice is born. You can observe instead of absorb, reflect instead of react, and decide what deserves your energy. And what is not one of the biggest reasons people stay mentally trapped is because they confuse awareness with emotional attachment. Awareness means noticing what is happening around you, understanding what is being said, and recognizing different perspectives without letting them define you. Emotional attachment, on the other hand, happens when those observations start shaping your mood, your self-worth, and your sense of direction. You can be fully aware of someone's opinion and still choose not to carry it with you. But most people never learn that distinction. The mind often treats attention as agreement. When you focus on a comment, replay it, analyze its tone, or imagine how you should have responded, you are feeding it emotional energy. That energy turns awareness into attachment. What started as a simple remark becomes a mental loop, and that loop steals your focus long after the moment has passed. This is not because the opinion is powerful, but because you allowed it to settle inside your thoughts without boundaries. Learning the difference requires conscious practice. Awareness is calm and neutral. It observes without judgment. Attachment is charged and reactive. It brings tension, defensiveness, or self-doubt. When you notice your emotions rising, that is the signal that you have crossed the line from observing to absorbing. The goal is not to shut down or pretend you don't care at all, but to pause and ask whether this information is useful or simply distracting. When you stop attaching emotionally, you begin to realize that opinions are temporary events, not permanent truths. They pass through your environment like noise, and you get to decide whether to let that noise become a voice in your head. Detachment does not mean disrespect. You can listen, acknowledge, and move on without internalizing. This ability is what gives strong individuals their quiet presence. They don't need to argue with every viewpoint or defend themselves against every assumption. Emotional attachment also keeps you stuck in other people's expectations. You start adjusting your behavior to avoid criticism or to chase approval, and slowly, you drift away from your own values. Awareness pulls you back. It reminds you that you are responsible for your actions, not for managing how others feel about them. The more you practice observing without reacting, the more control you regain over your inner world. This separation frees mental space, sharpens judgment, and restores self-trust. When awareness stands alone without emotional attachment, your mind becomes a place of clarity instead of conflict, and you move through life grounded, focused, and unshaken by every passing opinion. Reclaiming your mental space begins with understanding that boundaries are not only something you set with people, but something you set within your own mind. Most mental exhaustion comes not from what others say, but from how long you continue the conversation internally after the moment has passed. When you don't have internal boundaries, every opinion, criticism, or expectation walks straight into your thoughts and starts rearranging your priorities without your consent. That is how focus gets fractured and purpose gets diluted. Internal boundaries mean deciding what deserves continued attention and what is not. Just because a thought appears doesn't mean it has the right to stay. The mind constantly generates noise, much of it triggered by external voices, but you are not obligated to entertain all of it. When you allow yourself to mentally revisit situations that are out of your control, you give away time and energy that could be used to build, create, or improve. Reclaiming mental space is about taking that energy back. One powerful shift happens when you stop personalizing everything. Not every reaction is a reflection of your worth, and not every criticism is a verdict on your ability. People speak from their own experiences, limitations, and emotional states. When you recognize this, you naturally stop carrying what doesn't belong to you. This perspective creates distance between your identity and external input, and that distance is where peace begins. Another key part of reclaiming mental space is learning to close mental loops. Unfinished emotional conversations replay because the mind seeks resolution. If you don't consciously end them, they continue in the background, draining attention. Closing a loop doesn't mean you were right or wrong. It means you choose to move forward without needing validation. You acknowledge what happened, extract any useful lesson, and release the rest. As internal boundaries strengthen, clarity improves. You become more intentional with your thoughts, more selective with your focus, and more disciplined with your emotional energy. You stop reacting automatically and start responding deliberately. This doesn't make you detached from life. It makes you present in the right places. Your mind becomes a controlled environment instead of an open door. When mental space is reclaimed, confidence grows naturally because it is no longer dependent on constant reassurance. You begin to trust your own judgment again, and with that trust comes calm, direction, and resilience that cannot be easily disturbed by outside noise. Shifting focus from external validation to inner direction is one of the most powerful changes a person can make. because it moves the source of confidence from something unstable to something grounded. External validation is unpredictable by nature. It depends on moods, opinions, trends, and people who may not fully understand your intentions. When your motivation is tied to approval, your sense of progress rises and falls based on reactions rather than results. That creates a constant state of emotional dependence where peace feels temporary and fragile. Inner direction works differently. It is guided by personal values, long-term vision, and self-respect rather than applause. When you operate from inner direction, decisions are made based on alignment instead of acceptance. You begin to ask whether something moves you closer to who you want to become, not whether it will be liked or praised. This shift doesn't happen overnight because approval has been reinforced for years through social conditioning. But once it starts, it changes how you experience effort, failure, and success. One reason people chase validation is because it offers quick emotional rewards. A compliment feels good immediately, while inner growth is quieter and slower. But that quick reward comes at a cost. It trains the mind to seek permission before acting and reassurance before committing. Over time, this weakens self-trust. Inner direction rebuilds that trust by teaching you to rely on your own standards. You begin to measure progress internally, which creates consistency even when external feedback is absent or negative. This shift also changes how you handle setbacks. When validation is the goal, failure feels personal and discouraging. When direction is the goal, failure becomes information. You adjust, learn, and continue without questioning your worth. That mindset creates resilience because your identity is no longer tied to outcomes or opinions. You stay steady whether you are praised or criticized. Focusing inward does not mean ignoring others or becoming self-centered. It means allowing feedback to inform you without defining you. You can consider advice without surrendering control. You can accept recognition without needing it to feel complete. Inner direction gives you the ability to move with quiet certainty, even when no one is watching or applauding. As this focus strengthens, your actions become more intentional and your confidence more stable. You stop performing for approval and start building for purpose. And that internal alignment becomes a source of strength that does not fade when external voices grow louder or quieter. Building quiet confidence through self-respect and discipline is not about proving anything to anyone. It is about becoming someone you can trust even when no one is watching. Loud confidence often seeks attention and reassurance, but quiet confidence is rooted in consistency. It grows when your actions align with your values, when you do what you said you would do, and when you keep promises to yourself even in small, unseen moments. That self-respect becomes the foundation for a confidence that does not need validation. Discipline plays a central role in this process because it removes emotion from decision-making. When you rely only on motivation or feelings, your confidence fluctuates. Some days you feel strong, other days you doubt yourself. Discipline creates stability. It teaches you to move forward regardless of mood, fear, or external opinion. Every disciplined action reinforces the belief that you are capable, reliable, and in control of your direction. Over time, that belief becomes unshakable. Self-respect grows when you stop negotiating with your standards. This means saying no to what weakens you and committing to what strengthens you, even when it's uncomfortable. When you tolerate behavior, habits, or environments that drain you, you silently teach yourself that your well-being is optional. Quiet confidence emerges when you decide that your time, energy, and focus matter. That decision changes how you speak, how you carry yourself, and how much power you give to others' opinions. Discipline also protects your mind. It limits overthinking, reduces emotional reactivity, and creates structure where chaos used to live. When your daily actions are intentional, there is less room for doubt to take over. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth because you see evidence of it in your own behavior. Confidence stops being something you feel and becomes something you know. As quiet confidence builds, your presence changes. You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. You stop reacting to every comment. You become comfortable with silence and steady under pressure. This kind of confidence doesn't announce itself, but it's felt. It commands respect without demanding it, because it's grounded in self-mastery rather than approval. When you combine self-respect with discipline, you create a life that reflects inner strength instead of external noise. You move forward calmly, focused on growth, and committed to becoming better one day at a time. And if this message resonated with you, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.